Since the whale crossed the Harrington Bar and headed upstream 3 weeks ago, the south channel of the Manning River near Taree has become something of a living laboratory. The 10-metre, 12-tonne tropical whale is under round-the-clock observation by rangers and researchers. Initially, one section of the river was closed to boats, but it's now been reopened.
However, we do remind people that there are still the regulations that restrict the approach distances to the animal, and that's 300 metres, and within that 300 metres they can approach to 100 metres, but at an idle or a no-wake speed.
Researchers are experimenting with buoys and underwater audio recordings to entice the whale back to the sea.
We've been monitoring the animal since it's arrived in the Manning River.
Coal is Australia's biggest export earner, reaping $7.5 billion last year, half of that from Japan. But a union-sponsored report says that's not enough, claiming the Australian government and coal producers have sold out to the Japanese. The left-wing Evatt Foundation has recommended 4 major changes to coal policy. It wants the government to use its power to veto unfair trade agreements. It's called for price negotiations to be held in neutral territory. It wants a board to provide a united front for coal talks and a coal trade authority to help negotiate international coal prices. But the New South Wales Coal Association, which represents producers, says the recommendations are impractical and would ultimately be destructive.
I think there would certainly be a reaction against us by consumers if we were to endeavour to form that sort of cartel. As I said earlier, we're only a small player really in the world market. There are a lot of alternative suppliers of coal.
The report will be added to the union's submission to the Taylor inquiry, which is investigating Australia's coal trade. The Federal Minister for Resources, David Beddall, says he hasn't seen the report and he'll wait until later in the week before giving the government's response to the document. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
At the Opera House last night, it was Jane Lawrence's performance of Black Swan from the ballet Swan Lake that helped secure her the coveted ballet scholarship.
I just couldn't comprehend it. It was just such a shock. It was just a dream come true.
80 dancers from across Australia and New Zealand vied for the $10,000 prize money and overseas airfares. However, the prestige of having won the award has instantly made her a sought-after property.
It opens up a lot of doors. I've had offers to do classes with the Australian Ballet Company and Sydney Dance Company, so it gets me a lot of exposure.
Jane is a full-time dance student studying for her HSC by correspondence. Mari Walton-Mann, who's taught her for the last 11 years, says both talent and commitment have paid off.
She's a very exciting dancer, and there's a lot of girls that just seem to go through the movements, but she uses the dynamics of the music and helps the music drive her through the dance.
The City of Sydney Performing Arts Challenge has been running since 1974. Many previous winners are now with the Australian Ballet or performing overseas. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
A much publicised worldwide racing ban enforced by the Hong Kong Jockey Club kept Darren Beedman out of racing for 9 months. But on Saturday he returned to Randwick, ending one of the most frustrating periods of his life.
It was a long break, but to be able to sort of get back into it and put the silks up and be able to be in something that you love and that you ride for, it was a great feeling.
One of his rides was on Cameron Hopeful Corbora in the Group 3 Tramway Handicap, which was also contested by Australia's Mare of the Year Flitter, which finished 11th behind next Tuesday's top weight Big Dreams. At today's carnival launch, Beedman announced he had accepted the ride on Flitter next Tuesday, searching for his second victory in the Cameron, winning on Windsor's Powell in 1988.
Jimmy Cassidy's going to Singapore for an invitation race, so Max Lee's offered me the ride, and she comes through. She had a few excuses on Saturday in the tramway, but she's as good a ride as any you'll get in the Cameron.
Handicapper today, with Telesto an unlikely starter, there are several lightweight chances, with the Paul Perry trained Navy SEAL, which ran third in the tramway, one of the best. In the Cup, Dark Czar, Melbourne Cup winner Tiakau Nick and Umpala head the weights, with last week's Wyong Cup winner Town Oak on the limit.
Leading researcher on the ageing, Professor Tony Bro from Sydney University, addressed the conference. Alzheimer's is a common disorder causing loss of memory and orientation. Professor Bro says the risk of developing it increases with age and family history.
We do think there's some environmental factors that are causing it, same as they do heart disease or lung disease, but we don't know what they are.
He discounts the often touted theories that aluminium or zinc increase the risk of developing dementia. Ern Alchin's life completely changed when his wife developed a form of dementia 6 years ago.
A sense of loneliness because my partner's not the partner that I had. Yes, there is a sense of loss, and it can be a lonely.
Access to a support group and daycare for his wife 4 days a week has helped him cope.
The daycare has been a godsend to me because I was a prisoner at home, really, that I couldn't go anywhere.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
With more than 80% of New South Wales in drought, the state's rural sector is desperate. The current dry spell could well see suburban residents in a similar situation. The Lower Hunter's 3 sources of domestic water, the Grahamstown and Chichester dams, plus the Tomago sandbeds, are at around 70% of capacity. That's down 10% on this time last year.
We would like at this time of year to be at least at 10% higher if we could, because we're about to enter the time of year where people get the sprinklers out and start watering, and that's when the available water starts to get used up.
David Evans says there's no need for alarm at this stage, but people should start thinking about their water usage.
If the community can cooperate with us and leave the sprinklers in the shed and rely on the periodic showers we're getting to water the lawn, that will leave us much better placed to deal with the situation if we get more months of drought.
However, if the warm weather continues and we don't have some significant rainfalls within the next few months, the situation will need to be reassessed with more stringent measures enforced. These would initially involve encouraging voluntary reductions in the community's water consumption, then, if needed, placing restrictions or bans on external use. In the meantime, some simple measures the public can take to ease water demands include using alternatives to sprinklers in the yard and giving gardens a drenching several times a week, not daily. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Stephen Van Davis appeared in Newcastle Court today charged with causing a child under the age of 18 to participate in prostitution. He was also charged with receiving money, knowing it was derived from child prostitution. The prosecution said that between July last year and April this year, Van Davis caused a 16-year-old girl to have sex with numerous men, including the captains of visiting Greek ships. On each occasion, Van Davis, who part owns an escort agency, received half of what the girl made. It was also alleged in a tendered statement to the court that Van Davis assaulted the 16-year-old when she refused to have sex with him after a party where she'd been paid to have intercourse with 4 separate male people. Solicitor for the prosecution, Greg Thatchers, described the charges as gravely serious. He went on to say that the young woman was in a vulnerable position and in need of guidance. It's self-evident the guidance she received at his hands. In sentencing Van Davis, Magistrate Col Elliott took into account his earlier pleas of guilty and evidence that no trickery had been used or the child had not been physically stood over. However, he said the sentence must be a deterrent to other like-minded individuals. Magistrate Elliott sentenced Van Davis to 9 months periodic detention for the charge of causing a child to engage in prostitution and fined him $3,000 for receiving money from that act. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Just down the end of Lawson Road, Cardiff, is a little piece of Eden. No, that's not carpet, that's lawn. It gets mowed every second day in summer, once a week in winter. And what about these cinerarias, the stocks and the snapdragons? Ron and Dulcie Drew's pride and joy. Have you got a green thumb?
No.
Well, how do all these plants grow?
Well, I guess it's a fair bit of luck and good rainfall.
The Drews Garden is the grand champion of the Newcastle Horticultural Society Spring Competition. Ron says he has no special secrets, just giving his plants a mix of fertilisers. He spends about 3 hours a day in the garden 7 days a week, and there's no question the hard work has paid off. And anyway, it's good tonic for Dulcie. The gardening keeps Ron out of the house.
She doesn't want me in the house at all. She says I'm a whinger.
Better off out in the yard.
Yes, mate, yeah, you keep away from everything then.
It was a miracle nobody was hurt. 4 vehicles colliding with each other after the lead car was clouded by smoke. The State Rail Authority had been burning off at about 2:30 when the wind changed, blowing the smoke into the line of oncoming traffic. The vehicles received minor damage and all the occupants escaped unharmed. The local bushfire brigade was called to douse the remnants of the fire, with the SRA running out of water. At this stage, nobody has been charged over the incident.
Since last year's win in the Cameron Handicap, it's been a big 12 months for the Max Lees trained horse. The 5-year-old has placed in a number of Group 1 races, most notably winning the Doomben 10,000. Last week, she was named Australian Mare of the Year. With the Cameron a week away, Max is happy with Flitter's preparation.
She's working quite well, and her runs have been quite good. She's only had the 2 runs back, but no, I think she'll run well.
Flitter will carry 56 kilograms in the Cup with Darren Beedman on board.
Darren's no stranger to her. He won a race on her when she was a 3-year-old, but as she's getting up in the weights a bit, so it makes it a bit harder. But the mare's going well, and I think she'll give a good account of herself again.
As for rumours, the Cameron may be Flitter's last run before being retired to stud by Sydney owner Arthur Baxter.
No, she won't be. No, she'll have a spell probably after that, and I'll bring her back for the autumn. She'll race next year, and she'll probably go to stud next year.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Since developer Almino Australia first proposed a dross recycling plant along Mitchell Avenue at Curry, antagonism to the idea has steadily grown. Last night, residents took their concerns to council, fearing environmental problems if the plant goes ahead.
As I said, contaminants, fluorides, the waste products, where they're going to go, they're going to have to get trucked to Cessnock, dangers of it getting trucked.
The developer argues the facility, designed to recycle a byproduct from the production of aluminium, will create employment for the small town, up to 150 jobs during the 3rd stage.
The people that will more likely be employed at the plant might come from the other plants that will no longer be recycling the dross.
Cessnock Council commissioned an independent consultant to assess the development.
That independent study will give us what we hope are the right answers, as far as we're concerned, to enable us to make an informed decision.
Councillors will review a report next week and make their final decision in 2 weeks' time. Council will then pass on its recommendation to the Department of Planning for its consideration, but it's the Minister who'll have the final say. Council's been assured that decision will be made as soon as possible. Melinda Smith, NBN News. While their friends might have been in normal school classes today, these students weren't missing out on lessons, the briefing session representing a crash course in history. Selected from across the country, the team of 41 students and 10 chaperones will set off this Sunday on a 5-week study tour of the US and the UK. It's part of a unique youth program organised by the United Mineworkers Federation.
It started in 1990. I was in the United States and in Washington DC in particular, and I thought if the union could send its officials overseas, why shouldn't it send the children of its members? And the program simply grew from that.
The all-expenses-paid trip isn't a big holiday. There's 4 major study topics and some special treatment along the way.
The tour that they go on in the White House is not open to the public. You are not allowed to go on the tour unless you're a special invitee of the American government.
Students will be billeted out in the homes of other mining families, and most are looking forward to bringing back more than just a few souvenirs.
Knowledge of the other countries and lots of new friends, all sorts of things.
Just a lot of knowledge about other places so that I can share it with friends and family.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The 4-day Christchurch Cathedral Festival will begin on the 22nd of this month, with organisers scoring a coup, the Australian Opera's Gillian Sullivan. Gillian now lives at New Lambton with husband and 2 kids, settling here after 10 years performing in the great opera houses of Britain and Europe. Her singing career began in Adelaide, where she grew up.
It was actually church music that got me into singing. In the first place, I joined a choir and was introduced to very good composers and the love of singing.
In the festival, Gillian will be accompanied by trumpeter Daniel Mendelow and organist Philip Mathias in pieces by Scarlatti, Purcell and others in an acoustic environment ideal for the works.
A lot of modern halls are designed to cut echo. So you'd be working extremely hard and the audience wouldn't be getting the beauty of the rounded tone at the top of the voice, which a cathedral will give.
This is the computer control headquarters at Hunter Water. It's manned 24 hours a day, keeping a watchful eye on the region's sewerage network. By mid-next year, 161 pump stations will be online, hooked up by special technology.
Our system involves sending information by radio waves back to our head office such that we can monitor and control remote installations.
The $1 million project has many advantages. In the past, inspectors visited pump stations every day. Now there's a more efficient and effective maintenance procedure with crews called out to specific jobs. But the biggest advantage is the early warning system.
Some of the problems that can occur are surcharges due to pumping problems, power outages, and if we can avoid doing that, we'll save the environment damage.
Hunter Water's commercial arm is marketing the software both here and overseas, and demand is growing.
Farmers, irrigation industry, other water authorities, we've developed this technology and we're doing further development this year.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. Based on T.S. Eliot's magical tales about cats from all kinds of alleys, the Andrew Lloyd Webber production has become a nearly $3 billion theatre office hit. Set in a giant rubbish tip, the show reveals the lives behind 24 felines of all shapes and sizes. "23-year-old Sylvie Palladino plays Grisabella, thanks to her big break during the recent Asian tour.
Our leading lady got sick, had some vocal trouble and had to go off. And I was thrown on 2 days before opening night.
To prepare for the part, cast members have spent endless hours studying the animal's nature and movements, a more challenging task for the leading lady.
I don't have a cat. I'm actually allergic to cats myself. So I had to watch my neighbour's cats from a distance so I wouldn't end up sneezing.
A show all Moggy owners will appreciate. Cats opens at the Civic Theatre tomorrow night.
The Cronulla club has been in shock this week following the death of reserve grader Ben Lysart. The 20-year-old who played in last week's win over Canterbury died in a freak accident attempting to stop a car rolling down a driveway. The effect of his death will no doubt be reflected in Sunday's game against Newcastle.
I believe that they will play with a lot of emotion and to be quite honest, to be coming out of the ground at us, I think it'll be very difficult, especially a very difficult start for us.
If the Knights are to qualify for another grand final, they'll have to overcome Cronulla, who beat them in the second last round of the competition. But Newcastle's lineup is vastly different from the one that succumbed to the Sharks. All bar Stephen Cray to take the field on Sunday, the bench a measure of the Knights' strength.
We have got a lot of depth on our bench with Butterfield and Billy Puden and Chrissy Watson, plus a lot of the good young talent coming through in the 21s. Our bench is very good, and when we do make changes on Sunday, we won't lose anything in strength.
The Knights made a tentative start to the match. Fullback Robbie Ross, one of the many guilty of undoing the good work, attempting to force the pass early in the tackle count. It wasn't until the 29th minute that Brett Grogan posted Newcastle's first try with a 50-metre solo effort, shrugging off several would-be defenders. Returning from a broken hand, Tony Butterfield was called off the bench. The ensuing play, the ball from one of his early touches, resulting in a determined run from captain Jason Martin, giving the Knights a 10-2 half-time lead. A Cronulla penalty goal and try in the opening minutes of the second term, after a disastrous breakdown in communication in the Knights' in-goal area, levelled the scores at 10-all. Cronulla went in search of the field goal, but with the Knights struggling with ball retention, the Sharks had enough possession to eventually post their second, taking a 16-10 lead. A late try and conversion attempt failed to send the match into extra time, the Knights to play St George in next week's final. And
Newcastle waterside workers gathered at Town Hall to vote on the future of the four-day strike. The media was shut out once the meeting started, union members emerging 2 hours later more determined than ever.
Our membership voted unanimously to continue this strike indefinitely, pending a resolution of the dispute in meetings held tonight between the Prime Minister, the Minister for Transport and the Maritime Union of Australia.
The strike has created a city of stranded ships off Newcastle's coast, with 19 vessels waiting to enter the harbour. This includes 14 coal carriers with contracts for more than 1.2 million tonnes of coal. At least another 16 carriers will arrive by the weekend, in what would be the biggest build-up of vessels since the coal problems of the 70s. Then it was called Rand's Navy. The latest fleet could just as easily go down as Brereton's boats, with union members furious with the Federal Transport Minister.
They're irate and they're calling virtually for the head of Brereton. They don't think that he should stay in his portfolio. His reckless handling of the ANL dispute has endangered the employment of our members, and they're calling for his blood.
It's already cost Newcastle industry many millions of dollars, but unless an agreement is reached tonight, it could become a bitter and costly battle.
We've got every confidence in the resolve of our membership. The tougher it gets, the tougher they'll get.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
One cover over. The other one's got one of many out. Looks like as good as anywhere.
Much better than being in the office. Better fun.
That's no good.
Ask anyone and they'll tell you Ray Allen is a man who knows a shag from an axe minister, a runner from a rug. In fact, he's been around carpet since starting work at the age of 15. That was 50 years ago, and like any other career-minded young man, he had to work his way up.
When I first started at M. Leighton & Son, I was a roustabout. I had to do clean the offices and go for the lunches for the boys and did the things like that because I was only the boy, you know.
When his boss sold the business to Grace Brothers back in 1944, Ray stayed on in the carpet section, which now specialises in rugs. For most shoppers, carpets like fashions come and go. But for Ray, they've held a special attraction, one that's lasted and seen many changes in the past half-century.
There's so many different things out there. You've got acrylic and wool and, like all those sort of carpets are quite good. And there's so competitive they are these days too.
But Ray has never been one for change. He still lives in the same house he was born in.
I've even got the same wife, so I don't change very often,
Following his 65th birthday this week, Ray is drawing the curtains on his career. Workmates who say they'll miss him, giving him the perfect retirement send-off. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
"72-year-old Charlie Henderson has been weightlifting for almost half a century, with most of his training done in this backyard shed at his home in the Newcastle suburb of Adamstown. While the surrounds may appear humble, his achievements certainly aren't. Charlie reigned as state and national bantamweight champion for 10 consecutive years from 1951 and represented Australia at the 56 Olympic Games. Charlie retired in 1962 but has made several comebacks, each time expanding the trophy table. Now he's taking on the Masters, next week competing in Perth in 4 international competitions, then it's on to the World Masters Games in Brisbane early next month.
I'm sure of gold, and that's what I'm after. Hunter Valley, we're going to beat them, we're going to show them.
It's this kind of determination that's kept Charlie lifting in a career that nearly wasn't. During his first year in the sport, Charlie broke his leg. The doctor's diagnosis was to amputate. Charlie disagreed.
He turned around and said to me, look, he said, if I do it now, he said, what's going to take place? He said, in 2 years' time, he said, it'll still have to come off. He said, you'll never be able to do enough exercise. I said, you can stick it together? He said, yeah. I said, you put it together. I said, and let me worry about it.
Charlie's vitality is infectious. He agrees he's mad competing at his age, but he loves it. However, there's no illusions about competing forever.
You can have your youth for a little while and you can have fame for a little while. You can't keep it. Nobody can keep it. You're only getting the end of it.
He believes the secret to extending the life of the lone is clean living and staying fit.